Special guest today is Matt Lutton. Welcome to the show.
How are you?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt, and how you got started writing horror.
Let's see. So I grew up. I always liked special effects stuff like that. So monsters and movies, I always gravitated towards. And even if it was like a crappy movie, if the monster looked cool, I always went and saw it. And then, seeing the monsters. Usually, I got introduced to the monsters through the movies, and then I remember I saw Hellraiser, and I just loved it. And so then I heard, oh, it's based off of a book by
Yeah.
Clive Barker. So that got me into, checking out. Anytime I heard something was based on a book after that, I was like, oh, I got to check it out.
Yeah.
And, you know, grew from that. And then I was driving for work. I was driving about 45 miles each day. And so I was like, okay, I loved reading, but I just didn't have any time. So I finally did audiobooks. And I love short stories because my attention span is just, like a squirrel.
Yeah.
If it's too long, I'm just like, okay, I'm asleep. So I did the Books of Blood and by Clive Barker, and I just loved them. And I would almost guess endings before, the ending came up. And some of the endings that I guessed, I thought were better. I was like, oh, well, it would have been cool if they did this. And what if this happened? And not to, crap all over Clive, but it was just like, well, that's, I had these
Yeah.
ideas floating in my head. And periodically, I just kind of thought of characters and a story. And I was like, it can't be that hard to put a book together, especially nowadays. And man, I was wrong on that one. But yeah, that's how it kind of started. I was like, all right. And I just started writing in notebooks, 10-minute breaks, stuff like that. And since they were short stories, it wasn't anything extremely taxing. And I never really planned on publishing it. It was just something to write.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you get an idea? Where does the process start from, and where does it kind of like flow through?
So, ideas to me, my whole thing, as long as it's not a story where it's like, I call them with teeth stories. Like, there's a coffee cup, but it has teeth. I hate stories like that where it's just you try and turn something that's not scary at all into scary by making it alive. Horror to me, it's way more. Monsters aren't scary to me. I mean, they can be, but people are scary. Cancer's scary. Divorce is scary. The girl that you ask out denying you, or and turning you down, that's scary. Being a bad parent is scary, stuff like that. And then when you really dig into those ideas, you can kind of peel the onion back and put horror elements into it and fantastical stuff, and it makes it way more personal to me. So, I could literally just be sitting in a coffee shop and somebody will walk by and they'll be wearing a pin, and it'll bounce this and some idea in my head of, well, where'd she get that pin? What's that pin mean, or where's that pin been? you
Hmm.
know that kind of thing. And if I can make it into a fun story, I will.
So are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm definitely a plotter. um I don't My whole thing is, I know the ending usually of a story, but I don't know where I'm going with
Brilliant. And how do you sort of like, do you stick to the plot, or do you find yourself sort of like flowing away from it and then have to come back
it.
to it?
No, I will flow wherever it takes me. um I very rarely write out, um like an outline or exactly what's going to happen. Um, and you can probably tell in my editing, just as it's, mismatched. There's some misspellings and stuff like that. My drafts go from one story to a completely different story, and I just kind of go where the story takes me.
Fantastic. So what's your favorite horror trope that you like to write about?
Oh man. Um, I know it's played out, but probably the, you're I was the bad one the whole time. Just because it, everybody has the capacity to be as good as they want to be and as evil as they want to be. I mean, if you put two people in a room and they're starving and there's a cupcake, I mean, you're going to see some evil stuff come out of those people where they might have not been violent ever in their lives. They're going to be ripping each other pieces,
Mm,
and that's the fascinating stuff to me.
brilliant. Would you be the one having the cupcake?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm eating the cupcake.
So, what's been the hardest thing about writing in the horror genre?
Scaring people realistically, because there's so much horror out there now that everything's kind of watered down. Um, and you can, I mean, if you think about it, we've been telling horror stories since we had fire. You know, scary stories are what we did to entertain each other. So if you can come up with an original idea or an original story, that is probably 90% of the battle.
Yeah, that's right. Though, a lot of the tropes have been written out, haven't they? Really.
Oh yeah.
So, with your characters and your stories, are any of
Mhm.
them based on true events of your own or any fears that you have?
Oh yeah. Um, the Pancake Man in my first book, it was my dad was in the ICU, and I mean, I had written the 10 drink minimum throughout that year, but that character, I didn't know how to describe him. And then I was up for mm, probably 32 hours straight at one point, and I was in a Denny's, and I just started laughing and crying, and I was drinking massive amounts of caffeine, probably more than my body should have had.
Yeah.
And all that I wanted was pancakes. I just wanted something that tasted good and would make me feel better. And so I just ate pancakes. And that's where that character kind of came from. It was a guy that was so beaten down all the time. And, he has to be this messenger for this demon and, always gets the shit end of the stick, but at least he has pancakes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt at that moment. It's like my life's upside down. I am gonna fall apart and fall asleep at any moment, but I have this sweet sugary thing in front of me.
So, what's been the most difficult scene you've ever had to write?
Ooh. Um, there's a story in Candy Dish um, called "You Have Been Served," and it's a very personal story. Um, I can't even really get into it just because there could be legal ramifications from it, but it is a very personal story to where I felt powerless, and it's somebody that has all the advantages against me. And I was thinking, well, what could I possibly do to get back at this person? And that's where that idea kind of sprouted from. So that was a very emotional story. I put a lot. That was a story to where I think I needed to write it for me and
Yeah.
for my family, and it was kind of my grieving in a way and getting the anger out.
Yeah. A lot of
Mhm.
authors do say that it is a way, writing is a way of helping them heal.
Definitely.
So, which do you think's been your most popular book?
I think Candy Dish is the favorite because it's polished. Uh, when I put a lot of well, I should go back. I had a lot of help with Candy Dish. I have had editors that went over it that didn't have to do it, didn't get paid for it. I've had friends go over it, reread it thousands of times. I've had people put money into it that was not my own, which helped immensely. And so it's a polished book. It doesn't have a lot of errors in it. I mean, it's good if it does. I don't want to hear it. uh, but Ten Drink, my first book, it was for me. I wanted to publish it, and I didn't think anybody was going to read it. It was just kind of like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I can be proud of it. And the editing process, I had no money. I edited it partly myself, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to spend some money on an editor. So I took $300, gave it to somebody, and they completely butchered it. And not only that, but they lost the, again, this is a learning curve for me, they lost the original Word document.
Yeah.
So I basically had to pick through the book, re-edit it, rewrite it on the fly. And there are some editing issues and some misspelled words, I think. I got most of them fixed, but Ten Drink is more of like I always call it like a campfire story. You know, if you're going in there and you're expecting it to be a polished, beautiful literary masterpiece, it's not. It's just a bunch of scary stories that are fun.
Yeah.
But Ten Drink is definitely the one that I think people are gravitating towards because it's entertaining, it's fun. Some of them are funny, some of them are horrific, some of them are really scary about the future, and it's got a kick-ass cover, so that helps.
Brilliant. So what's been the most memorable piece of feedback that you've had?
I got everybody is pissed at me because my stories are too short. They want more, which is great. I mean, what a terrible problem to have, right? But my whole thing is I hate filler. I just hate it, and I don't ever want somebody to read a story of mine and just be bored at any moment. I want, like I said, I love the cupcake. I want my story to be a cupcake. I have to work on it being a full course meal and one that you're going to keep enjoying. So that's probably the best criticism. Like that, just make them longer. And I'm working on it now. So
Do you find yourself finding it easier to write shorter stories than novellas?
oh yeah, big time.
Novels, sorry.
You know, you can do stingers, and it's definitely easier to jump scare people than it is to keep them entertained and immersed in the story. You know, you can turn almost anything into a scary, thought-provoking short story, but keeping people entertained and invested in it long enough, that's where the real talent comes in. And I don't know if I have that yet.
I think that's something that comes with experience, doesn't it? The more writing you do, the more
Definitely.
the more it sort of like comes with it. I find
Mhm.
that I struggle writing novels. I get stuck.
Mhm.
But short stories, I'm okay with those, and novellas, I'm okay with those. But any longer at the minute, I just find that I get stuck.
Yeah. I mean, I'm worried. I like King. Everybody likes Stephen King, but I don't need to read 40 pages on the pizza guy's backstory. You know, I don't
Yeah.
ever want to be that writer.
So have you got any existing projects that you're excited about?
I do. I'm working on one is a secret. It is for a friend, and if they like it, I will publish it. The other one is another collection of short stories. And then I am also starting on the sequel to Tendrick.
Brilliant.
I
And
got a
when
full
are
plate.
those?
Mhm.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
So I've got a pretty full plate going right now.
Yeah, sounds like it. When
Mhm.
are those likely to hit?
Yeah.
Next year?
Oh yeah. I've got I would say the short story would probably be out next October. And then I do monthly Patreon stories.
Yeah.
So those are kind of just short stories for Patreon. But yeah, probably I'd say the short story collection will be out in probably October.
Do you put your Patreon stories into like a book eventually?
I think I'm going to. I've uh I've kind of just put them on the website, for the patrons to read, and then there have been people that want to actually have copies of them. So I think I'll put them into a little short book.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice have you got for aspiring writers who want to break into the horror genre?
Just write. That's the main thing. Um, If you think it's a bad idea, just write it down and don't throw it away. You can always come back to it and, add on to it. Have a file that's literally just shit ideas and just put it in there, and maybe one day it'll turn into a hit. You never know. My second one would be spend your money on an editor.
Yeah, I fell into that trap
Mhm.
when I first
Yeah.
published one of my books. I did the editing myself.
Yeah.
And a couple of
You
reviews
think,
I had back were about
you think,
grammar.
I
Yeah.
passed English. And then, no. Yeah.
No, you definitely need another set of eyes going over your work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so where can listeners find your books?
My books are available on Amazon. So you can get them there, or you can just direct message me on Facebook or Instagram. My Facebook is my name, just Matt Lutton. And that's where I do sign copies right now.
Brilliant. And
Mhm.
lastly, do you feel any remorse for what you put your readers through?
Oh, no, fuck them.
That's the best answer I've had yet to that one.
Hey, there you go. I know.
That's lovely. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Matt. So thank you
You
very
too,
much.
my dear. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.